start our panel, Timor-Leste and ASEAN, political discontents and social clashes and making ecumene. I will be the first presenter, and then Paulo and then Nadine will present their papers. And there is also a video we'll try to show from Ariel Mota Alves, who could not join us because he's in Hawaii, and because of the hour he cannot join us. My presentation will provide, let me share with you. Will provide a political context and the international relations context of the candidacy of East Timor to ASEAN. And well, are you able to see the presentation? Okay, nice. So the title is Timor-Leste's membership to ASEAN, the political process and its discontents. And the main goal of the paper is to present what we called the constellations time. In fact, we'll present a kind of chronology of the candidacy of Timor-Leste to ASEAN and of its difficulties and discontents, and we'll finish with the new context, the new pandemic context, and its impact in the region and its impact in Timor-Leste, and how it can change the process, if it affects the process, or if it is not so important, and if the fact that the pandemic has changed all the world will have an effect in this particular case. So in fact, we have more questions than answers to this question. This is the wall of the presentation, the kind of index of the presentation. We have the chronology of membership aspiration, so it's the first part, and then ASEAN doubts and fears, and the role of major partners and global players. We'll have in mind China and the United States, the role of China, and in this particular context of COVID-19, sorry, the growing importance of China in Southeast Asia, and how the integration, the regional integration, has been affected by China, and how China has made a great change in Southeast Asia, and how Southeast Asian countries are trying to redefine their approach to China and the United States. We'll have also in this context the role of the European Union. So let us start. The first question is obviously that ASEAN is in a turning point nowadays, and this is the great picture of the question. The fact that ASEAN has since its beginning in 1977 adopted this ASEAN way the ASEAN way, which is based in a consensus method, nowadays we have to ask if ASEAN way is still sustainable in this pandemic context. Some things change, others don't change. So ASEAN way and this method of consensus is under pressure because during this crisis, this COVID-19 crisis, and other crises are an example of this, ASEAN didn't have an efficient answer to the problems. And there are several changes in some countries, for instance, Vietnam, who chaired ASEAN in the first semester of 2020, and Vietnam had a very efficient approach to the problem, or well, Singapore it's not a surprise to have an efficient answer, but the question is, ASEAN as a whole, as an organization, didn't have an integrative approach and answer to the problem. So it was individual countries that answered to the problems, not the organization. So that is the problem we are trying to discuss. And that leads us to the eternal question: how is ASEAN's capacity and willing of integration, or of integrating and to act as a group in a coherent direction? That is another question. How COVID-19 crisis has denounced the differences between member states, the individual weaknesses, and the need for a cooperation within the group, and how the ASEAN centrality is under test during this crisis and seems not to be a central idea, concept, or project, and how do these two questions are relevant, bearing in mind our case study. Sorry. So these are the general questions. Some of them are new questions. I think it will be interesting to discuss it during this session. The second part of this presentation is about the chronology. And the chronology, well, the candidacy was submitted in 2011. Until now, we don't have a definite position of ASEAN, despite the fact that according to ASEAN criteria, Timor-Leste has fulfilled all the items of the ASEAN chart, which are stated here. Timor-Leste is in Southeast Asia. We need the recognition by all ASEAN member states, agreement to be bound and to be abide by the charter, and ability and willingness to carry out obligations of membership. In 2019, there was a fact which is important. A working group that visited Dili and recognized that Timor-Leste was able to join the security community of ASEAN. But bearing in mind the crisis, the COVID crisis. We don't know how it will evolve, this question and for the next time. So these are the 6 constellations. These are the main milestones of the process. The first one, legitimation of independence through alliances, 1975, the first attempt of Timor-Leste to be independent, 98, the unification of resistance, and in 2002, the restoration of independence. The second constellation is about the fact that Timor-Leste belongs to several organizations, not only from Southeast Asia, but from other areas in the world. The fact that Timor-Leste belongs to CPLP, to the Lusophone community, or the fact that in 2005, Timor-Leste joined the ASEAN Forum, the ASEAN Regional Forum, which is an institution that leads with security issues. The third constellation is about the clash of egos. The clash of egos, 2006. We are thinking about the political crisis in Timor-Leste, and the fact that several politicians in Timor-Leste, namely José Ramos Hortas, Ana Guzmão, and Zacarias da Costa, had different perspectives on this process. The fact that since 75 and even before 75, the political elite had the idea of Timor-Leste after the independence joined ASEAN is certainly very, very, very important. So the question is ASEAN candidacy, the willing of Timor-Leste, of the political elite of Timor-Leste to be part of ASEAN is during all this time and after the restoration in 2002, a main goal of the East Timorese foreign policy. The fourth constellation, on which we called a stop and go process. Several incidents of the process. In 2011, the official application, but in 2014, the fulfillment of the requirements. In 2016, a summit was organized, an ASEAN summit was organized in Dili. So the several governments of Timor-Leste, especially in these last years, have attempted to try a capacity to organize events, a capacity to be part of the organization, a capacity of improving the conditions, the political and economic conditions to answer to the requirements and to show to the community, to the group, to the ASEAN group, that it will be able to join the organization. So The fifth constellation, ASEAN as a game changer, is it's a constellation on the institutional evolution of ASEAN. And finally, the sixth constellation is on the problems of these two last years, the political crisis, and well, in 2019, the fact-finding mission, that working group that recognized the ability of Timor-Leste to join the security community, and finally the political crisis in Timor-Leste, and the fall of the government, and finally COVID crisis. Well, this third part on doubts and fears, I guess I don't have much more time, but I will try to finish it as soon as possible. This question on the hybridity, the fact that Timor-Leste is not a typical Southeast Asian country, the fact that Timor-Leste is a country with connections in Europe or in Africa or even in Australia, of course, with relations with China and the United States. So Timor-Leste is not a typical country in the Southeast Asian region. And in addition to this, Timor-Leste has high standards regarding questions like human rights or democracy. Of course, the economic reasons, the lack of expertise, the political instability, the lack of human resources is, of course, strong arguments to delay the admission of Timor-Leste to the organization. And of course, as all we know, Singapore is leading the opposition to the admission of Timor-Leste. I'm not going to deepen or to develop these topics. Of course, China is an investor in Timor-Leste. China is providing aid to Timor-Leste. China is very important trade partner to Timor-Leste after Indonesia. And not only China, but China, Hong Kong, and Singapore as well. There is an agreement regarding Belt and Road Initiative, the Silk Road, with China. So China, it's not all we know that China is rising its influence in Timor-Leste, and China, and in 2020 it was confirmed, China through the mask diplomacy and the aid it provided to the whole region is it's a growing major player. And that is that must be seen in connection with the fact that there is less confidence from Southeast Asian countries regarding the United States, of course. Regarding the European Union, well, what we can say is European Union has a lot of problems regarding the relations with Southeast Asia. and especially with ASEAN. So bilateral dialogue still prevails in the approach of the European Union to the region, and Timor-Leste and the support of Timor-Leste candidacy from European Union is not a big issue, because European Union still have this bilateral approach to the individual ASEAN countries. This is information on fieldwork and the persons who we interviewed on this issue. We can discuss it afterwards. And finally, technical and political arguments are used as a delaying strategy. This is not necessarily a dilemma. We cannot think of a no from ASEAN, so the delay is the only answer. It's a fact that the unanimity is required in European Union or even in other organizations to the admission of a new country, and ASEAN is not different. In addition to this, there is ASEAN way and the need of a consensus. As a positive remark, the fact that Timor-Leste has tried to join WTO, and it seems to be a parallel exercise. If Timor-Leste is admitted to WTO, well, it will give an additional argument to Timor-Leste. The geopolitical framework is a source of instability, since Timor-Leste is at the crossroads of Australian and Chinese influence, and in the pandemic context, China raised its influence. The European Union, as I said, is experiencing some difficult deals with ASEAN bloc, and the only and marginal advantage would be to have a political ally in ASEAN, but economically it would be irrelevant to have Timor-Leste as a partner. And new lines of research. The questions I have to ask you. ASEAN not willing to grow in terms of member states and diversity? That's a question. The dialogue with partners is mainly bilateral. Until when will this approach last? And how COVID-19 and the weak capacity of facing this challenge, opening the doors to China, how this will affect the usual procedures and how it can be seen as an evidence of ASEAN's lack of centrality. The hedging strategy, well, the fact that some of the ASEAN countries are trying to have relations with China and with the United States nowadays is under pressure. It is not easy to think that some of these countries will have to make a choice. They rather would prefer to have these relations with the two giants and not to make a choice. It is to see if this COVID crisis will impact on a new hierarchy of powers and regional asymmetries. As I said, Singapore or Vietnam especially Vietnam, of course, used this crisis to become more prominent in the group, and Indonesia has faced several problems, especially regarding.
No, sorry to interrupt you, but the time is already running.
Okay. I will finish.
Okay.
Just one more minute. And to end, this is my last sentence, and thank you, Nadine, for calling me the attention. The effects of this crisis and speed of ASEAN integration process remain to be evaluated, and delaying procedures seem to be unavoidable regarding Timor-Leste candidacy in this particular COVID context. Of course, economic problems, capacity building problems will remain and will worsen due to this crisis. And thank you very much for your attention, and sorry for being so long. So let me finish. Okay. Now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Paul will present Sophie was not able to join us.
Yeah, I sent her the link by email.
And she didn't answer your email.
No. Well, I'm not sure if she get it, because our email from the university sometimes have problems. But anyway, I sent to her, and I asked Dili, because I think we are only listening by Dili, and viewed, watched by Dili, and Dili says that if we wish to proceed in Portuguese, no problem. So, I'm not sure if eventually, if there is no one else that is watching us, maybe we can. I don't know what you think about it. Maybe I can present the slides in English and talk in Portuguese.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to suppose right now. Like, you have the slides in English anyway. If somebody comes, they see the slides in English, you present in Portuguese, and in the end, you have to
and if there is any problem, anyone in the audience may ask, and I may abstract some of the items in English. So let's share. Então, bom dia a todos, outra vez, ou good evening, ou boa tarde em Dili, e queria dizer-vos que este painel que estamos aqui a apresentar é parte de um projeto cujo logotipo está aqui, que é Criseia, e é um projeto internacional que termina no ano que vem, em fevereiro, e, portanto, estas apresentações são, em grande parte, apresentações de dados já com interpretações, ainda que apresentações sumárias. Queria também dizer-vos que este projeto é um projeto que procura relacionar a ASEAN, como já perceberam, com Timor-Leste, procura centrar-se na candidatura de Timor-Leste à ASEAN, através de perspectivas múltiplas, quer dizer, quer do ponto de vista das relações internacionais, da ciência política e das relações internacionais, por um lado, mas também do ponto de vista bottom-up, quer dizer, from below, do ponto de vista sociológico e antropológico. E é um pouco essa a vertente que eu aqui vou apresentar. Ou seja, a equipa fez trabalho de campo em Timor-Leste e entrevistou, trabalho de campo qualitativo, e entrevistou 3 grupos. Os grupos da área política e da área da alta administração, os grupos relativos à sociedade civil, representantes da sociedade civil, empresários, representantes de ONGs e a juventude, estudantes. E de certo modo, o fundamental da minha apresentação tem a ver com os resultados que derivam desse trabalho de campo e dessas entrevistas a estes 3 grupos, considerando nós que o que temos é um poliálogo, quer dizer, múltiplas vozes com múltiplas perspectivas. Bom, portanto, nesta apresentação vamos ter aqui uma introdução, aquilo que nós chamamos uma constelação de ambivalências, a perspectiva da ASEAN, a perspectiva de Timor-Leste e, finalmente, algumas interpretações finais. Trata-se de um trabalho em progresso, não é? Ainda para comentários e discussão, ainda que neste momento estejamos já na escrita final do relatório. Portanto, o que podemos dizer é que, porventura, temos aqui uma constelação de ambivalências. E até que ponto a ASEAN está ou não num novo tipo de jogo? Não é? Essa é uma das perguntas. Portanto, temos aqui ambivalências do ponto de vista de Timor-Leste e ambivalências do ponto de vista da ASEAN. Por um lado, Timor-Leste, como já foi dito pelo Nuno Canas Mendes, procurou preencher e preencheu todos os requisitos necessários à candidatura. Um dos problemas, e essa pode ser a ambivalência, é até que ponto os requisitos foram preenchidos formalmente, mas sem uma ação efetiva. Quer dizer, as pessoas foram nomeadas para os cargos, as reuniões foram feitas, mas o processo foi mais formal, mais, digamos, administrativo, do que propriamente um processo verdadeiramente empenhado, competente, decidido. Portanto, há aqui, em algumas entrevistas, de facto, a indicação de uma possível ambivalência, ou seja, os requisitos formais terão sido todos preenchidos, mas terá faltado competência, empenho, efetiva ação. Por outro lado, do ponto de vista da ASEAN, há também uma ambivalência. Até que ponto a tradição que nós dizemos CMLV, ou seja, a tradição, digamos, se é que há uma tradição, mas o que aconteceu nos anos 90 com o Camboja, lá o Vietnã, né? Portanto, nesta entrada dos anos 90, né? Se é possível esperar uma continuidade deste tipo de entradas ou se não. E, de facto, há aqui indicações de uma mudança do jogo, não é? Um game changer, não é? A new game, a new paradigm, portanto, um novo modelo. E este novo modelo tem a ver com The ASEAN Charter, de 2007, The ASEAN Pillars e a ideia do The ASEAN Economic Community. Portanto, há aqui duas perguntas que fazem com que se possa dizer, porventura, se possa interpretar, se possa inferir que Timor-Leste está entre situações, in between us, entre situações, num jogo que é um jogo aberto. Por um lado, podemos perguntar se de facto Timor-Leste está a seguir as regras em termos efetivos, está verdadeiramente empenhado, ou seja, perguntando de uma outra forma, se de facto a ASEAN é uma centralidade para Timor-Leste. Esta é, talvez, a pergunta-chave. É a ASEAN uma centralidade para Timor-Leste? E nós temos algumas respostas neste nosso trabalho de campo, não é? Como vamos já ver nos slides seguintes. Mas esta é a pergunta, não é? Está Timor-Leste verdadeiramente empenhado e verdadeiramente usando as competências necessárias para jogar o jogo da ASEAN? É a ASEAN uma centralidade de facto para Timor-Leste e para os seus vários grupos? E, por outro lado, a pergunta do lado da ASEAN. Está a ASEAN a mudar o jogo, a mudar o paradigma, a mudar o modelo? Portanto, estas são as duas grandes perguntas. Não é? De facto, agora vamos ver as duas posições de forma mais, enfim, um pouco mais detalhada, mas mesmo assim não muito. A ideia de que a ASEAN tinha, de facto, uma admissão tradicional, que é aquela que decorreu durante os anos 90, e a ideia que a ASEAN está, neste momento, a mudar o jogo. Não é? Tem uma perspectiva de game changer, tem uma perspectiva de mudança de paradigma. Não é? E uma mudança de paradigma porquê? Porventura, porque uma mais forte, a stronger ASEAN is needed. Portanto, uma ASEAN mais forte é necessária e essa ASEAN mais forte implica também uma maior exigência. Portanto, há aqui uma ideia de negociações estratégicas num terreno movediço. Há aqui uma ideia de negociações, strategic negotiating in a loose ground. Portanto, de facto, há aqui uma lógica de negociação estratégica, mas em areias movediças, não é? Num terreno movediço. Não é? E, enfim, a ideia de que é necessário intermediários, middlemen. A perspectiva, então, de Timor-Leste, que é aquela sobre a qual nos debruçamos mais, aquela na qual nos centramos. E, então, o que descobrimos, grandemente, foi isto. Para Timor-Leste, a ASEAN tem funcionado como um assunto exclusivamente político. An exclusive political issue. Um assunto específica e exclusivamente político, que de facto não envolve, apesar de ter havido tentativas de envolvimento, até por Xanana Guzmão, mas que não envolve Timor-Leste como um todo. Por outro lado, é muito notório que há um conflito de egos. Um conflito de egos. E este conflito de egos, que também podemos dizer do ponto de vista antropológico, um conflito entre big men, entre patriarcas, um conflito entre líderes. É um conflito de egos. E em que este conflito de egos nota-se especificamente, como vamos ver a seguir, num determinado grupo que entrevistamos, que é o grupo dos atores do Estado, portanto, dos políticos e da alta administração. Não é? Mas é um tema extremamente importante porque remete para uma sociedade de famílias, uma house society, não é? Uma sociedade de casas ou de famílias, e em que uma sociedade em grande parte influenciada ainda por grandes casas, por grandes nomes, por clãs, por uma lógica clânica, por uma lógica do patriarca, do líder, não é? E em que cada líder, ao fim e ao cabo, procura ter a sua influência, procura exercer um patronage, não é? E procura ter uma clientela. E é esta lógica de clientelismo, de clientelism and patronage, de clientelismo e de patrono, não é? De lógica de patrono, que acaba por baralhar o sistema, ou seja, por não ser fácil que a ASEAN seja uma centralidade, uma vez que só pode ser uma centralidade se for útil para determinados egos. Não é? Portanto, faz parte de uma estratégia em que determinada posição internacional se liga, ao fim e ao cabo, a determinada posição nacional de determinadas pessoas. Bom, por outro lado, nós podemos dizer que em Timor-Leste se pensa que Timor-Leste está pronto para a admissão na ASEAN, mas para a admissão na ASEAN como um kick-off, como um momento para que a ASEAN ajude Timor-Leste a desenvolver-se. Esta é a ideia, não é? Portanto, uma vez que Timor-Leste cumpriu formalmente, então Timor-Leste está pronto. Estou a dizer isto porque esta é a ideia que muitos timorenses nos apresentaram. Nós estamos prontos para aderir à ASEAN, mas estamos prontos em que sentido? Estamos prontos porque formalmente cumprimos os requisitos e agora precisamos de entrar para que a ASEAN nos ajude no nosso desenvolvimento. Esta é uma das ideias. Não é? E depois, claro, e o Nuno Canas Mendes também já referiu, há aqui uma perspectiva de múltipla, de estratégia de pertença múltipla. Não é? Uma estratégia de pertença múltipla, ou seja, Timor-Leste não está apenas centrado numa negociação estratégica com a ASEAN, ou para pertencer à ASEAN, mas também está interessado na sua posição em várias outras regiões internacionais, numa espécie de globalização fragmentada, ou seja, está interessado em pertencer à CPLP, está interessado em pertencer à área da Ásia-Pacífico, eventualmente Commonwealth. Portanto, há aqui uma lógica de múltipla pertença. Queria ainda dizer, ainda na continuação do slide anterior e antes de terminar, porque este já é um slide para o final, queria ainda dizer que estas 3 ideias, vou agora frisar 3 ideias centrais. A ideia do clash of egos, a ideia da pertença, da multiple strategic belonging, da pertença estratégica múltipla. E uma terceira ideia, que é, estamos prontos para entrar desde que nos ajudem ao desenvolvimento, ou seja, que é uma ideia que refere um déficit de capacidades, Cada uma destas ideias foi mais enfatizada em determinadas entrevistas. Ou seja, o clash of egos, portanto, o conflito entre patriarcas ou entre líderes, é muito claro nas entrevistas aos líderes políticos, aos atores políticos, portanto, ao grupo da política e da alta administração. Uma lógica de múltipla estratégica, de pertença múltipla, estratégia de pertença múltipla, é muito evidente na sociedade civil, nos empresários, na sociedade civil. E um certo receio de falta de capacidades para o desenvolvimento é muito evidente, e também um receio da invasão dos demais, é muito evidente na juventude. Portanto, ainda que todos estes aspectos surjam, cada grupo que entrevistamos evidencia mais uma determinada perspectiva. Portanto, podemos dizer, enfim, no final podemos levantar várias possibilidades e também devo dizer que estas possibilidades não incluem neste momento ainda alguns dos elementos, não sei se vamos conseguir incluir neste caso concreto, porque implicaria trabalho de campo, algumas das mudanças em função do Covid-19, mas a verdade é que podemos dizer que Timor-Leste está entre várias comunidades imaginadas. E podemos perguntar-nos, que é esta a pergunta que aqui está no slide, se simplesmente essas comunidades imaginadas são em Timor-Leste uma grande confusão, ou seja, não há verdadeiramente uma estratégia e um entendimento, ou se trata de um trabalho em progresso em que essas comunidades imaginadas, como eu disse, de uma certa globalização fragmentada ou fragmentária, ou se quiserem de um poliálogo, numa lógica de inclusão de Timor-Leste estrategicamente em várias arenas da globalização, se é um trabalho em progresso e está em curso. Portanto, há aqui 2 possibilidades, não é? Uma possibilidade de uma interpretação no sentido de uma certa confusão, uma certa salada, não é? Digamos, em que os timorenses não se entendem, ou, pelo contrário, um trabalho em progresso. E podemos dizer também que essas comunidades, é uma interpretação possível, essas comunidades internas e externamente estão muito relacionadas com 2 aspectos, com o conflito entre egos. O conflito entre egos acaba por influenciar a forma como essas comunidades imaginadas se criam internamente e, por outro lado, a estratégia da múltipla pertença, que acaba por revelar o potencial dessas comunidades imaginadas em termos internacionais. Podemos ainda colocar estas várias possibilidades. Se Timor-Leste está, digamos, está a criar uma dependência em relação à ASEAN, ou seja, se, enfim, numa tradução difícil, se está numa trela curta, não é? Se está dependente, não é? Se está dependente. Se Timor-Leste tem um lugar de gatekeeper, ou seja, um lugar de crivo, ou de porteiro, ou de, não é? Porteiro, um pouco esta ideia, portanto, de servir de controlo de fronteira, não é? Todas estas perspectivas de porteiro, de controlo de fronteira, não é? Entre países. Por exemplo, especificamente na relação com a China. Não é? Há aqui algumas possibilidades, não é? A sua proximidade em relação à China, a sua relação com a China, ou se Timor-Leste deve ser entendido numa lógica mais aberta, de simplesmente tradução múltipla. Quer dizer, não é? É um país que possibilita uma série de traduções com várias arenas da globalização, porque tem relações com a Europa, como o Nuno disse, não é? Há aqui várias raízes, a Europa, a Ásia, o Sudeste Asiático, o Pacífico, inclusive em termos de raízes até África, não é? Portanto, há aqui várias influências e raízes de Timor-Leste que acabam por poder servir a Timor-Leste para se posicionar num lugar de tradução. Enfim, não sei se da mesma maneira, deixo aqui até a pergunta até mais ao Nuno, numa conversa...
Paulo, we need to come to an end of your presentation.
Ok, I'm finishing. Que é, até que ponto poderíamos comparar Timor-Leste e Macau nessa tradução. E como viram, este era o último slide e, portanto, obrigado Nadine, mas estava mesmo a acabar e espero que tenham entendido esta ligação entre o português e o inglês, mas se calhar já só estamos a falar entre nós.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Paulo, for the presentation. It was really nice to see these slides. Yeah, I mean, it's only the three of us now, but I'm gonna hold the presentation anyway because it's gonna record it and people can see it afterwards, right? So I'm gonna share my screen here, right?
Let's hope only the right people could see our our recording panel. Eventually, we should ask to the organization not to reveal our recording panel.
Maybe that's the best thing
because
to do.
This is not published, and we are releasing data again.
Yeah, I agree. So I want to connect directly what you call Timor-Leste as a translation and imagined communities in an international level, as you both know, through the ecumene. But I'm trying to share my screen and I don't. Here. Okay. So for the two of you, this is not a new presentation. But I decided to make this one and not the COVID paper because in the end it made more sense to present this one. So first of all, as Paulo has already mentioned, our researchers, they are part of a bigger project, CRISEA, from the EUH 2020. And Professor Paulo and Professor Nuno are the leaders of the Portuguese research project that we have. And this precise paper that I'm presenting here is an output of the greater research we are doing, but it's also a direct output of my master thesis that I have finished in March 2020. Nevertheless, it's like a lot shorter version because it's a paper that we have framed throughout this master dissertation project. And yeah, so let's start with the content. First of all, so that you have an insight on how the paper is structured, we have built an introduction. Then we have framed the beyond border relations in a bidimensional approach, where we have questioned ASEAN as a relation between states. Then we have presented our case study, which is Timor-Leste, through its translocal imaginations on the world at large, but in our case, like in this precise case, on ASEAN. We have collected narratives from the library and narratives from the field. And lastly, we have presented our interpretation, ASEAN as an ecumene and international region in the making, which has been followed by a conclusion. In the introduction, we have raised a set of questions, which firstly is, how is ASEAN understood through sociocultural perspectives and may be grasped from bottom up? Are beyond border projections expressed in the interrelation between the micro and the macro? And what may the use of it be for the building of international regions? Saying so, the problematic that we have found in our research is the building of international regions from bottom up and the beyond border realm as a platform of meanings. Our objectives were to explore precisely such globally interconnected meaning systems as they may be reproduced through translocal imaginations, through bottom-up perspectives. And for this, we tried to unveil the elements of the ecumene in ASEAN state relations. The theoretical framework that we have applied in this precise research was firstly, we have been moving forth and back within a globalization and transnationalism framework and the anthropology of space. And the two main concepts that we have used for this paper is the global ecumene and translocal imagination from Brickell and Beda. The ecumene we have used after Hannes, but of course, there are a lot more interpretations from the ecumene and translocal imaginations. Nevertheless, these were the two main focuses that we had in this paper. This does not exclude other thoughts and thinkings in the international imaginations realm, such as, for example, international imagined communities from Benedict Anderson that we have been expanding in another paper, which Paulo has already mentioned as international imagined communities at an international level. Furthermore, imagined roles by Apadurai, worldviews, globalization, global Gemeinschaft. So there is a lot that has already been done on this specific realm. Nevertheless, we have been facing a gap in literature, precisely when approaching international regionalism through local perspectives within such social-cultural clusters. Why have we used the ecumene for our exploration? So we understand through Hannes' interpretation that the ecumene is a space of strong cultural exchange and encounter, which functions as a tool between bottom-up and top-down. And this is the ground on which both the micro and the macro merge into one. And in terms of translocal imaginations, we found that these are used as tools for establishing a space beyond the boundaries of the limited nation states and or regional frontiers, as it is usually a focus in transnationalism discussions. Translocal imaginations are individual emotional dimensions of coping with our everyday fast and moving world. The methodology that we have used in order to establish this research was a multi-sided methodological approach, which consisted in this paper of literature review, a bibliographical research in forms of narrative collection in the library, and empirical data collection in form of interviews that we have collected in the Chronology project with another purpose, meaning that we actually have started the research on exploring the relation between ASEAN and Timor-Leste in the theme of its membership procedure and ASEAN centrality. Nevertheless, in this data, we have found very important information with which we have been expanding our research. So the technique of data analysis was primarily the comparative content analysis, and we have used an interpretivist approach to go closer to our findings. And the time frame has been from 2018 until now, but it's still ongoing, meaning that the Chrysia project has started in 2018, but the master thesis evolved out in 2019, and the project still goes to 2021. So the data and main results that we have found is that firstly, we explored a bidimensional approach towards international regions, precisely speaking ASEAN. That means that we have tackled international relations discourses and anthropological discourses. And in international relations discourses on ASEAN and in general on international regions, we have found that beyond border relations are mainly tackled as economic and political phenomena. This means that there are mainly links to or perspectives on institutional links on a global scale and diplomacy, power, and political hierarchy. Nevertheless, in constructivism approaches, there is already included a sociocultural perspective as well, but still it is embedded within this institutional and political domain. In anthropology, beyond border relations are tackled through a sociocultural perspective, mainly through intersubjective relations, movement, and migration, but also through narratives and imaginations. Our main finding within this research was that translocal imaginations on the ecumene may be a complementary view to state relations, meaning that the micro is never an exclusive thing of the macro, it's always an interacting zone. Saying so, our case study of Timor-Leste has served us for helped us to understand the circulation of constructions on beyond border relations through states' perspectives as much as for people's perspectives. As I said, because they're always in an intermingling process through what we have found out. Translocal imaginations in this realm are sociocultural perspectives on beyond borders for the building of ASEAN as an ecumene, as an international region, or precisely speaking, as a space of strong cultural encounter. And this we have analyzed through social situations within a framework of kinship and amity perceptions. That means that in Timor-Leste, there's a strong narrative of the inside-outside relations, which is based on the brothers from abroad, like brother terms, like kin terminology, and like the distinction between brothers and neighbors, but it's always situational, as it always depends in Timor-Leste. So these we have built on the ground of international regional organizations. Concluding, we would like to say that we interpreted our data as ASEAN as an ecumene, which is built from bottom up, through a bidimensional approach towards beyond border relations, which evidence the interaction between the micro and the macro, as I've said before. Furthermore, the beyond border realm, through Timor-Leste's perspective, is seen or may be seen as a gigantic family, which is addressed through such kinship and amity relations, which are complementary to the state's relations. And our final remark of all of that was that international regions may be an arena of meaning negotiation, which are depending on time, space, and realities. Our research is not a closed one. We see it as an open research path, which still needs a lot of exploration, of course, for which reason we remain with further questions, which are: what sort of people interaction is at stake when we approach international regions? Where do meaning systems meet? How do they evolve? And can this be grasped in their interweaving dimensions? And where do imaginations start? Where do they end? And what influence may they have on the perception and construction of reality? Thank you very much for your attention. I will open the board now for our next presentation. Yeah, everybody here. Can you hear me? Yeah. Nuno, Paulo, I think we could open the board now for Ariel, no? Oh,
Yes, yes, I think so, yes.
All right, Nuno.
All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna open the stage now for a presentation that we have gotten from Hawaii. I just have to find it here. Unfortunately, the presentator Ariel cannot be here because of heavy time differences, for which reason he sent us this presentation, which we're trying to present now. I don't know if it will work with the audio, but let's give it a try. How can I make that? I have problems with my screen here.
You have to unshare.
Yeah,
First.
but I cannot open the.
First, you have to unshare.
No. If I'm still in the share. Here, now you can see, right?
No. No.
No?
No. You have to interrupt the sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and now you open the.
Can you hear? Did you hear it?
No.
Do you hear?
No.
No, it's too. It's. Can you put higher?
No, it's on the highest. Let me see.
Now you can hear it.
And can you hear?
Barely.
Barely.
Let me see.
Maybe with phone.
Yeah, but this is the same problem that we were facing yesterday in the presentation. I don't know why the presentations do not catch the audio, but maybe our technical support could help us in that. Antonietta.
Maybe you can send the email with this file to Lucy or to Antonietta.
Let me see. I don't have
The presentation.
Maybe you can put, it's a link, isn't it, Nadine? Put it in the conversation area here.
Yeah, wait.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little box there called chat, so you can just put the link
Yeah.
there.
I'm trying to get the link. It's because he didn't send the link, he sent the file to me. Nuno, do you have a link?
Let me check.
I will see as well.
It's in the Google Drive.
Yeah.
Here, I have sent a link, but it's a Google Drive file.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a Google Drive. Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it's the same that I have. Yes, yes.
She says the presentation isn't in the Drive.
Anyway.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel. I am a Timorese student currently doing my master's degree in political science at the University of Hawaii at Manoa.
Can you hear?
And I wrote this paper on
But
Timor-Leste.
there's a presentation. No, I'm not sad. Sometimes I make this face when I'm concentrated.
Under pressure for sure, but just
Who was turning on the video right now? It was not me, right?
Me.
Okay.
So Sophie just sent email.
And what is she saying?
That now it is too late. That
Really?
well, that it is my fault because I should have sent the link before.
Of course it's your fault, Paulo.
So the Ariel file, is it possible?
I don't know. Nuno is working on it, right? No. Are you working on it, Nuno?
No.
Wait a second.
Are you working on it? How?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel. I am a Timorese student currently doing my master's degree in political science at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. When I wrote this paper on Timor-Leste's ASEAN membership, I wrote it in my final year of undergraduate, when I was in my undergraduate at St. Olaf College. So my paper / my presentation will be on rethinking Timor-Leste ASEAN membership.
Are you able to hear?
Why hasn't Timor-Leste been accepted as one of the ASEAN member states? 4 years, this question has puzzled policy makers, foreign policy experts, academia, and the general public. Now, prevalent in the debate of Timor-Leste's ASEAN membership is a pattern of opinions that point to one thing: Timor-Leste's readiness. ASEAN researchers such as Paulo Seixas, Nuno Mendes, and Nadine Lobner found this when they did a research on what pundits, researchers, op-ed columnists write about Timor-Leste ASEAN membership in a variety of forums such as academic journals, policy blogs, and newspapers. They found that those opposing Timor-Leste's membership to fixate their opinions on potential economic burdens Timor-Leste will bring to the region, or point to weak internal developments and political clashes. Those who support Timor-Leste's ASEAN membership generally make cases about how Timor-Leste can push ASEAN towards embracing stronger democratic values. Incidentally, these opinions matter. Both sides of the debates are so patterned that these pundits become what some researchers, especially like the three researchers, refer to as social agents that can influence public opinions and political decisions. I would go as far as to argue that these opinions, in some ways or the other, have stalled Timor-Leste ASEAN membership. So this presentation is not going to further contribute to an already dense debate on readiness. Because to truly understand the complexity of regional institutions, we must allow ourselves to see regions such as ASEAN as not inherently structural, but as malleable, constructed by humans, and evolve over time. The focus on readiness subdues the distinct feature of Asian regional institutions that often international relations theories fail to capture. A specialist in regional institutions such as Professor Frederick Soderbaum argues that the diverse approach to study regionalism constitutes a weakness in itself. Worse, there is a lack of dialogue among regional scholars. They often write either from the perspective of regional specializations by disproportionately using Europe as the model. Or they approach it using different forms of IR, theoretical traditions of rationalism, constructivism, and other isms. Using the Soderbaum approach, I cannot help but notice how much the debate surrounding Timor-Leste's readiness reveals ways in which pundits essentialize sovereign transfer, political unification, and instrumentality of regional institutions to make their verdicts. Those are institutional characteristics that do not quite capture the ASEAN way, quote, of doing regionalism. Now that we have established how pundits may have gotten it wrong about Timor-Leste as an ASEAN member, I would like to break these ideas down and touch upon the other three themes of ASEAN regionalism, hoping to add more nuance to the debate. The first one is capacity constraints. The dominant narrative of Timor-Leste ASEAN membership uses capacity constraint to qualify the extent of Timor-Leste preparedness. However, the capacity constraint viewpoint ignores a rather history of humble beginnings ASEAN had. Material resources that states pose were never a prerequisite to entering ASEAN. Amitav Acharya, a prominent international relations scholar, said that ASEAN started by consolidating the middle power and weaker states, to form a new kind of regional institutions. Lacking material resources, ASEAN leveraged a different kind of regional leadership style that emphasizes mutual cooperation and consensus building, unless on aligning themselves with one particular big power or of the Cold War. He calls the ASEAN model as exemplary, a model that is flexible, shared, and pluralized. The ASEAN Charter also enshrined these values, which is to enhance regional resilience by promoting greater economic cooperation and to alleviate poverty and narrow the development gap within ASEAN states. Looking back, the capacity constraint wasn't prerequisite to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar when they formally asked to join ASEAN in the 1990s. So why is it that suddenly material and human resources are at the center of Timor-Leste debate? To this day, capacity constraints continue to hamper cooperation within ASEAN states. One way to look at it is the response readiness to COVID-19, in which some states far better in pandemic preparedness, such as Singapore, for example, and some underfund public health and are not ready, such as Indonesia. Moreover, only ad hoc commissions and small working groups whose purviews are vaguely defined with unenforceable regulations and limited power to continue to characterize ASEAN transnational cooperation, including in the handling of pandemics. This is just one example of how capacity constraints have made transnational cooperation among Southeast Asian states slow at times and effective when it is through a case-by-case basis. The point is, pundits are right when they say that Timor-Leste is economically underdeveloped. However, a little link can be made about Timor-Leste is unprepared to be an ASEAN member because of resource constraint. Moreover, not only ASEAN was founded based on capacity constraints, but capacity constraints continue to typify regional cooperation today. We're not just talking about pandemic preparedness, but also in terms of other areas such as security, energy, human rights, and environmental cooperation. The second aspect is what I call soft and informal. Regional institutions such as EU are characterized by hard rules and formal organizational structures that govern trade, security, and human rights. They are known as HF structures, so it is abbreviated to HFs, hard and formal. In HF-oriented institutions, hard and formal-oriented institutions, it is reasonable to see states transfer some of their sovereignty for a common benefit of all members, bound by a centralized authority. However, where do we see a centralized power and hard structure visible in ASEAN? The region that has more than 600 million population, the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta is only operated by approximately 300 staff with a budget of 20 million a year. There is only one individual staffed to monitor the compliance of ASEAN agreements, let alone enforce them. Instead, states are given the power to partake directly in regional leadership, and the relationships are done through soft and formal structures, also known as SI. The idea is put forth by Professor Sadia Pekkanen in her book Asian Designs. She defines Asian regional institutions to largely collaborate through framework of soft and formal. As a result of these informal structures, the scholars studying ASEAN assert that the region is more effective when dealing with issue-specific and result-oriented problems, as opposed to establishing a universalized standards across states. But the debates on Timor-Leste ASEAN membership somehow focus on how Timor-Leste is going to contribute to ASEAN, citing the lack of human resources and hampered by internal political struggles. Debate often say that Timor-Leste will hinder cooperation. However, the ASEAN Charter makes no mention of those hard prerequisites. States are only required to be located in Southeast Asia, agree to be bound by the Charter to fulfill membership obligations to become member of ASEAN. Moreover, these concerns would merit attention if the regional institution in question has more formal structures. But ASEAN is not an HF type institution. For instance, if we look at the free trade agreement among ASEAN states, some countries continue to be exempted from free trade agreements because, you guessed it, domestic interests matter a lot in Southeast Asian states. Most of the agreements established among ASEAN states are in a similar fashion. They are not binding or enforceable. Even when ASEAN has moved to ASEAN Economic Community, which aims to foster free movement of goods and services, labor and capital among one another, has not fully realized as each state focuses on their domestic affairs. An expert in ASEAN captured it well. His name is Lee Jones. He says that when people, when people speak of ASEAN doing X, it often does not mean that ASEAN as an institution, but merely some combination of one or more states, not all, acting on the basis of a more or less substantive agreement among the rest doing X. This doesn't suggest ineffectiveness, but it should at least offer us insights to rethink how pundits have set a higher standard for Timor-Leste and its ability to cooperate. Meanwhile, in reality, the cooperation itself remains weak and is done on a case-to-case basis. This is to say that ASEAN states matter in ASEAN. By imagining the ideals of political unification, political opinion writers ignored to put emphasis on each state and their positionality in the regional institutions. Lastly, it is what I call the myth of sovereign transfer. By now, we have established that the interaction among ASEAN states is through soft and formal structures. An interesting point to highlight is the debate surrounding the level of democracy in Timor-Leste, which is said to far better in the region. The debate correctly lays out that for long, ASEAN states are not receptive to foreign interventions, particularly in human rights. Citing the infamous non-interference policy and the respect for individual sovereignty among themselves, the debate have given examples about indifference attitude of ASEAN states towards Myanmar's Rohingya refugee case. However, the debate often quickly turns into how Timor-Leste membership will pose a threat to the regional institutions' human rights practices. It mentioned that if accepted, Timor-Leste will play a huge role in trying to redefine human rights practices in the region. Let us say that the assumption is indeed correct. Timor-Leste will indeed be an outspoken nation against Vietnam and Laos for its single-party authoritarian rule, or Brunei's strong Sharia law that jails people for merely being gay, or the military regime that is ruling Thailand, or Indonesia's human rights atrocities against West Papuans. Understandably so, because the people of Timor-Leste have long been subjugated to oppression and 2 times colonization. Thus, this precondition has cultivated a sense of solidarity for the oppressed members in the society. But the question we have to ask is, will Timor-Leste succeed? Unlike hard and formal type institutions, ASEAN is not characterized by coercion, let alone sanctions. Nor does ASEAN have a regional tribunal to try a member state for their certain human rights abuses. The existing human rights institutions, such as the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, are said to be not as effective due to the soft and informal type institutions. Under these conditions, the idea that Timor-Leste's entry to ASEAN will disrupt how Southeast Asian states and the handling of their human rights abuses, I argue that it is an ambitious view. Moreover, Timor-Leste's better democratic standards should not be confused with transnational activism. The latter is almost non-existent, understandably so due to its relative status as a young nation. The government of Timor-Leste is quiet in the West Papuans' human rights violations, despite similarities in this historical struggle. Even if non-state actors in Timor-Leste could play a role in advancing human rights causes in ASEAN, however, consideration is up to each state. And furthermore, efforts to strengthen institutional capacity are not on the table at the moment. When it was brought in 2017 summit, member states saw little changes to be made. Since ASEAN requires a unanimous vote to agree on anything, this proves to be challenging to bring everyone on board with everything. With all of this being said, pundits make a mistake when they try to replicate the theory of sovereign transfer, a political behavior more prevalent in hard and formal oriented institutions such as EU compared to soft and informal oriented institutions such as ASEAN. So in short, the debate on Asian regional institutions such as ASEAN should be examined more sophisticatedly, I argue. The focus on readiness is infuriatingly dominating the conversation of Timor-Leste's ASEAN membership. The narrative of readiness fails to account for the centrality of ASEAN as a regional organization, its distinct approach to leadership and cooperation, and its capacity constraints. Nevertheless, this failure is part of a larger conversation that needs to be addressed. The narrow, sometimes naivete inquiry to regionalism using primordial theoretical traditions and Eurocentrism has clouded the judgment of the so-called agents of public opinions, who dominate the platform through their writings. And even so, as the Sadia Pekkanen argues, their opinions ultimately find their way to shape important decision makings. They act as whisperers to policymakers and may or may not influence ASEAN heads of states to decide on the fate of Timor-Leste. It is always the wish of Timor-Leste to be more integrated within the international community since the beginning. As Asia's most impoverished nation, joining ASEAN could help diversify the economy, move away from oil dependency, and achieve economic prosperity. However, if readiness continues to shape the debate, Timor-Leste will not be considered ready anytime soon. My hope is for ASEAN leaders to reconsider how the debate of Timor-Leste ASEAN membership, Timor-Leste ASEAN membership is carried out in physical copies and digitally. And ASEAN leaders should re-examine the extent to which those debates advance or distort the narrative of Southeast Asia and ASEAN as a regional institution. At the end of the day, Timor-Leste has always been a part of Southeast Asian community, geographically, historically, and culturally. Thank you so much.
Very nice presentation of Ariel.
Indeed.
Nuno, let's open to debate.
Yes. Me.
Usei partidação. Olha, Tidardim dentro.
Quem é que está a coordenar? Bom dia a todos.
Yeah.
Bom dia.
Eu. Quer dizer, formalmente, pelo menos.
Ok, Nuno. Mas estão à espera que haja perguntas, é isso?
Estamos.
Ok. Desculpem lá que entrei agora. Eu estava aqui um bocadinho desfocada.
Em pausa. Fizeram pausa.
Antonieta, estamos a ouvir-te a falar. Desculpa lá.
Parece não haver perguntas, não é?
I think it's difficult because most of the time it was the three of us and we know the researchers of the other one, so it's a bit difficult, and questions directed to Ariel we cannot make because he's not here. So I think the debate would remain between the three of us, which is always ongoing. So
Yes. Okay, so we'll follow our discussion.
Creio que podemos dar por terminado, não é? O painel.
Acho que sim. Ok. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much for the cultural center in Dili to be present in the entire session. It was very nice to have you here. Would be nice to know who you are, but unfortunately we cannot see you.
Até já então, vou sair.
Bye bye.